Hi, this is Eric from longboxreview.com. Welcome to the show. This is episode 101, and I can't think of a better way to start the next 100 episodes of the Longbox Review podcast than to talk about my experiences at the 2016 Heroes Convention, or HeroesCon, that was held in Charlotte, North Carolina. And that was June 17th through the 19th. So earlier this year, I had been thinking about my desire to go to other cons. And by that I mean cons that were not basically regional. So every year for the last 10 years or so, or up to 10 years, I guess. I don't recall how many times I've been to Emerald City Comic Con in beautiful Seattle, Washington. I've been to the Rose City Con in Portland, Oregon once, and I plan to return this year as well. And of course, there's also the Spokane Comic Con that I've been to a couple times over the years. But this year, I don't recall if it was after I went to Emerald City this year or if it was something I had been thinking about for a while now. But I decided that I really wanted to go to some other cons, preferably ones that are kind of like in the top 10 when you think about comic book conventions across the country. And HeroesCon was basically top of my list. And the reason was because I've heard for years, listening to the guys at Comic Geek Speak talk about their experiences at HeroesCon and what a great show it is. And if you're a big comic book lover, then this is the show for you. I've read various posts on various websites and on social media about HeroesCon over the years. And so I decided that this was going to be the first, as I said, non-regional show that I really wanted to go to. So my lovely wife, Kitra, agreed to let me go. Actually, she said, when I said, "Hey, can I go to HeroesCon? It's in Charlotte, North Carolina." She said, "Sure, why not?" Because she's really wonderful that way and supports my comic book loving endeavors. So I booked a flight, which was outrageously expensive. So if you're traveling to Charlotte, don't be surprised if you have to pay an airline ticket that is I thought, way overpriced. But anyway, so you folks out there on the east side of the United States, or maybe even the Midwest, you're really lucky because you won't have to pay as much as I did to get out there. Which means, of course, that the because of the cost of flying and the cost of the hotel, and I stayed at the Westin, which is the hotel that is closest to the Charlotte Convention Center. In fact, the hotel is right across the street from the convention center, so it was very convenient for me. Highly recommend it. I know there are some other hotels in the area that people were staying at, but the Westin was really nice, and the discount was not too bad. I mean, the discount was pretty good. The price wasn't too bad for my stay there. And while I'm talking about price, for those that have heard of HeroesCon and wondered, what it's all about. That's what this show's about, guys. So I'm going to give you a bunch of details and then tell you about my experiences, which I probably should have led with at the top of the show. Anyway, here I am running my mouth off the cuff, as I often do here. But so back to the prices. So there was that cost, but the price for the actual HeroesCon tickets, surprisingly cheap. I was amazed at how much I paid for the tickets, which is like at least half as much as I pay for a long weekend pass for Emerald City Comic Con. So I think I paid, I don't know, I think it was, I want to say $30 for a 3-day pass. Anyway, so it was like I said, very very cheap to get tickets to the convention itself. And I heard when I was in line on Friday morning, I was talking to a couple guys who I think were more or less local, and they go to HeroesCon quite often. And they were talking about how the guy who runs the con, who puts the con on, Shelton Drum, he likes to keep the show accessible, hence the price. Which I was very appreciative of. So pricing aside, for travel and the actual con, let's see. I'm going to give you like a day-by-day rundown, and I may jump around a little bit, so bear with me. So I flew out on Thursday of that week. I had to get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, something like that, my time, so that I could get to the airport in time, get through, all the security checks, and then get on the plane. But man, I was tired that day, and I wasn't feeling good. Here's a tip: don't eat shellfish the day before you go on a trip like that. and I don't know. No, I'm just teasing. I happen to have. We went as an early Father's Day celebration. My family and I went to Red Lobster to have crab. Well, I had crab legs. They had other things, but because I love crab legs. Anyway, I think the stuff that I ate at that particular Red Lobster was, I don't know. I won't say, bad, but in terms of making me sick, but it seemed like too much of a coincidence that I eat that food and then, within 8 hours, really, I was not feeling good. So you can imagine my discomfort as I am traveling across the country to go to this convention. But it wasn't too bad. I got into the Denver airport and was feeling better by that time, but I was not happy. And like I said, I was really tired, so I slept a lot on that first flight, and a bit on the second one. So the second one is the one from Denver to Charlotte, and that took approximately, I want to say 4.5 hours, I think, flying time. So like I said, I got up at 3:30 and got into Charlotte at, I want to say, it was 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock Eastern time. Get my luggage, go out to the taxi, because I was told getting a taxi from the airport to the hotel is the best option. And apparently they only charge $25 for the ride. When I went back from the hotel to the airport on Monday, the following Monday, I got to ride in one of the hotel transportation cars. Now the hotel does not provide transportation to and from the airport. As a matter of course, like many hotels will provide a shuttle, for example. The Westin does not do that. But what they do provide are their transportation vehicles to take you places around the area. But they, like I said, they do provide that. It turns out it's the same price, so that's nice. It was nice anyway. I didn't think it was too bad of a price. Anyway, for someone who doesn't take taxis a lot of the places that I ever travel to, so I just want to let you know that in case you go to HeroesCon in the future, there is that option. Anyway, so I get to the hotel about 3 o'clock, get checked in, go to my room, and I'm just exhausted. But how HeroesCon does the ticketing is that, so you buy the tickets, like I did. I bought them online, and then they send you this information about the tickets, and essentially you have to go get your badge, which actually is a wristband. So at Emerald City Comic Con, I'm used to getting these little badges that hang on lanyards. And HeroesCon was no different, except that badge was not your ticket into the show. What you had to do was go to the registration, which was in the convention center, and they highly encouraged people to come to the convention center on Thursday, and they had it open. They had opened that up from noon Thursday through 8 o'clock. And so like I said, I got in about 3. I think I was at the hotel within the hour, and then I walked across the street to the convention center and got in line. There wasn't that much of a line. There was only like 2 or 3 people ahead of me. And I got my stuff. They checked me in. They asked for my name. They had all that stuff. It went without a glitch. They gave me a little bag with a little HeroesCon poster that went with it, and a map, which was separate from the program guide that I got, and along with my wristband. And they said, don't lose the wristband, because if you do, then you can't get in. So you have to wear the wristband all weekend long if you want to go to the show during that time. Now, I heard that the actual badge that they gave us as well with the lanyard, that you could get in, those with the 3-day passes with those badges, they would let us in a little early. Now, I never experienced that. I don't know where that came from. Maybe it's happened in years past, but I never experienced that. Now, having said that, so there were the start of each day. So on Friday, Friday, that's right. It started at 11. Saturday started at 10, and Sunday I think was 11 as well. I might have gotten that one wrong. Anyway, and with the exception of Friday, so Saturday and Sunday, they let us in early. It depended on what time it actually was, but I remember being in line those 2 days, and it was before the actual start time, and they were already letting us in. So I thought that was really nice that they did that. However, on Friday, I don't remember it. We might have actually been moving right before the official opening time of the con, but it wasn't. It was it was minutes, not like it was like a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes before. Whereas on Saturday and Sunday, it was definitely 5, 10. I think even on one of those days, it was maybe even 15 minutes before. Regardless, like I said, I heard this thing about the badge, and I did not experience what I interpreted that to mean. That's not a knock at all, of course. I just thought it was a curious bit of trivia. So, like I said, I got my stuff, went back to the hotel room, and then I was hungry. Even though technically, so I didn't. For me, it was about lunch. It was a little bit late, a little bit later than my normal lunchtime. But I hadn't eaten really anything all that day. I had a little snack when I got to Denver, a late breakfast, just to kind of settle my stomach a little bit. But I was hungry. So when I got into the taxi from the airport to the hotel, I asked the guy if he was familiar with the area that we were going to, and asked if he could recommend some restaurants. Because when I looked it up, there were a ton of places around the convention center, around the hotel, where I could eat, including a restaurant within the hotel, which incidentally I never ate at. But the taxi driver was very, very helpful, very gracious with his recommendations. In fact, he gave me so many that I could not remember all of them. But one of the places he recommended was this place called the Midnight Diner, which was about, I don't know, probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 blocks away, within walking distance of the hotel. And so I head out to the diner. It's this little restaurant. It has a silver it reminded me of a diner car. On the old diner cars on railroads. I'm sure that's what it's modeled after. But more importantly, it was so nice and cool inside because the day that I arrived, like I said, Thursday, it was 80 something degrees, and there was a bit of humidity. I don't remember what the amount was, but it was certainly more than I'm used to because I live in the Pacific Inland Northwest, and we don't have humidity to speak of. So all of our heat is dry heat. That's what I'm used to. And so when I go places that actually have humidity, it comes as a bit of a shock at first to my system. But so I was walking out in that heat and a bit of the humidity. So I was sweating a little bit by the time I got to the Midnight Diner. So getting in there in the nice air conditioning was very helpful for me. And I drank a lot of water. But I had at the Midnight Diner the collard greens for the first time, which I liked, and so I tweeted that out. I know nobody cares what you eat, right? But I wanted to kind of record the experiences I was having there in this new place. Like I said, I was by myself. It was just me going to the con, which I'll talk about that a little bit, but. Anyway, so I tweeted that out, and somebody who actually I follow, and I believe this person follows me on Twitter. They said, "Oh no! If you want good collard greens, you need to go to this other place, the place of which I have forgotten now. Now that I'm standing here recording, but I didn't think they were that bad. I liked them, so went back to the hotel room and just kind of." Well, I kind of fell asleep, actually, watching TV. Woke up a little sometime later, maybe an hour or so later, and then I got out the program and went through it and highlighted things that I wanted to, panels that I want to go to, because that's one of the big things for me when I go to cons is that I actually like to go to the panels, and I like to see the creators talk about stuff. The publishers talk about the things that they're coming up and releasing. And also more recently, like in the last year or two that I've gone to Emerald City Comic Con, I've been really interested in hearing the artists and the writers, especially the artists and colorists, talk about their craft. It just fascinates me how they do these things. The production of the creation and production of comic books is a topic that I'm really into these days. So I picked out, let's see here, I had basically one panel an hour, sometimes 2 or 3 within the same time period. And they started the panel started at 2 p.m. and they went to, the last one on that day was 5:30. Like I said, the event or the con started on Friday at 11, and I think it goes to 7 on that day. So I did that. I kind of jotted down, or X marks the spot on these panels so that I could figure out what it is that I wanted to, or what I thought I wanted to do. Now, also, a big draw for me for any con that I go to is back issue purchasing. So I always take my wish list, my want list, to the cons with me, and within the last year and a half too, I got the CLZ app for my phone so that I could take that list with me wherever I went. And that's another big thing, another big difference that I saw at HeroesCon. Like I said, I might jump around a little bit here, guys. Sorry. Is that when I was looking for the comics, I had my phone out, flipping through all the issues that I want, trying to find the ones that I want, marking them off as I went, so I didn't buy duplicates, because I always end up doing that. This is the first show that I did not do that. I'm very proud of myself for that. Anyway, I noticed that a lot of other people were doing this same exact thing. Now, in years past, say 2-3 years or more ago, I would see, just like me, I would see a lot of people carrying around pieces of paper, printouts of their want list, and they would mark them off as they go. So that was a different change that I noticed, or something different that has changed over the last couple of years. People relying more on their phones or tablets to do their shopping, or it being a tool in their shopping plan. So like I said, I really wanted to get some comics. I was even looking through the vendor list, and I have to say that I was, just looking at the sheer number of vendors there, I was really impressed at how many people were there. How many people who proprietors, that's what I want to say. How many proprietors were there to sell their stuff, especially the comics, because while Emerald City is a big show in comparison, for sure, just in terms of size and the number of people attending, how many vendors are actually at Emerald City in total, I think HeroesCon had more comic book vendors. It may not be it wasn't like twice as many or anything like that, but it was certainly, there were more from what I recall. Because, as I said, that's one of the major things that I like to do is the shopping. And so I end up hitting almost every comic book seller at the cons that I go to, just to see what they have, what the prices are, all that stuff. So I made my plan, and then I couldn't get to sleep. I was up till, I think it was after midnight at that point. Even though I was exhausted, I couldn't get to sleep. Part of it was just excitement. Here I was all alone in Charlotte, going to this con, and I think I was just really excited to discover all these new things, to see all this new stuff, eat all this new food, because that's one of the things I love to do when I go places, new places, is to experience the food. And I'll be talking about that along the way as well. So I get up. It's Friday morning. I had found, did I go? I think, speaking of food, I think I went Thursday. Pretty sure I did. There's a place called Emily's. It's a French pastry shop and coffee shop that was a few blocks away from the hotel. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I did, because I think I went there on Thursday night and got a tart, an apple tart, because I like tarts. And oh my God, that place was so good. I went there, I got dessert. I got up Friday morning, went there for breakfast. Got another tart and coffee. And I think I went back Friday evening for dessert. Bought enough for Saturday. Bought 2 tarts, one to take with me and eat on Friday night, and one to eat on Saturday morning. So Saturday morning was my breakfast. Went back Saturday night. Went Sunday night, and yeah, I think that was it. Anyway, so if you're in the down, is it Uptown? I think they called it Uptown Charlotte area. Anyway, wherever the convention center is, I highly recommend you go to Emily's French pastry shop and try their tarts, because they were damn delicious. Oh, so good. Anyway, so I went, like I said, I had breakfast, and then went back to, walked back to the convention center, and the line wasn't too bad at that point where I was. I think it was around, I want to say 10:15-ish that I arrived at the convention center, and I walked in the front doors and got in line, and I don't know that I can describe enough where I was physically between where the line was and where the door was. Maybe it was 50 feet away from the front door. And like I said, there was a line, and they had things so that you snaked through the area to accommodate everybody. But then, and that's where I had the conversation with a couple guys, three guys, about the con and what they did and their experiences, and they recommended the Baltimore Comic Con to me, for other shows to go to. So that's now on my list. And that's where I found out the whole they let us in early if you're wearing the badge thing, because I wasn't wearing my badge. I had the wristband on, but I was not wearing that badge. And one of the guys said, "Oh, you should put that on." And then eventually, the line keeps filling up. It goes out the door. I don't know how far it goes out the door because I'm inside, but they let us in, and thus begins my big adventure. Once I get down to the show floor, I walk in and go up to the main thing, and that's where they're giving out, for people who hadn't grabbed it yet, the program, the map, and one of the things that I wanted to get was I wanted to look at the shirts that they had. So they had the HeroesCon shirt, which matched the design of it, the graphics on it designed or matched the design of the poster that they gave out as well. But they had the non-compliant, the NC, so tying into Bitch Planet. It says Heroes Convention, and then underneath it says NC, which normally stands, like I said, for non-compliant. They call it the non-compliant T, but it has a little asterisk next to the NC, and down below that it says does not stand for North Carolina. So that has to do with the discriminatory laws that were put into effect in North Carolina and caused some businesses to declare that they will not be doing business in North Carolina in recent months. So I really wanted one of those. So I went to find where they're at, and they told me, but I didn't get it that day. I think I decided to wait on that. I'll talk about that for Saturday. But at that point, then I decided that it was time. I just wanted to walk around the floor and get a lay of the land, if you will, find out where all the comic book stuff was, look at the other vendors. And so I just started. And so basically the show floor was divided between all of the vendors in the front, and then all of the artists in where Artists Alley, which was a huge chunk of it. I mean, it was think of the show floor as a big rectangle, and like I said, one half of it in the front is essentially the vendors, and then the other half are all the artists and writers and other creative types of people who had booths, which that was amazing. I thought the focus on the creative types that go to the show was delightful and different. So I decided to first just kind of walk down the vendor aisle, if you will, the row. That's probably a better way to say it, the vendor row. And so I did that, and that took up a good chunk of my time because I was trying to figure out which comic book vendors to go to. So my usual plan of attack is to find a place that is, one, they have all their comics in bags, if not bagged and boarded. Two, that they're in order, at least, somewhat alphabetical order, or, publisher order. It's just some sort of order. And three, that their prices are, reasonable. So that took a while. There were a lot of places, actually quite a few vendors who were selling Silver and Golden Age books, more so than I've seen in Emerald City. Of course, they were wanting pretty penny for those books, but I normally don't look for Silver and Golden Age stuff. I'm more interested in late Bronze Age and into the modern era for things that I want to with which I want to shore up my collection. So I did that. There were a lot of comic book vendors who had their books in no apparent order. They were definitely, readers' copies. Some were charging too much for the condition they were in, I thought, but I tend to stay away from those, so it didn't really matter. But I did find there was one place in particular that I found that I really liked and bought. That first day, I bought a big bunch of comics. So actually, just in total, just to let you know, I actually ended up over the course of 3 days with the majority of them I bought on Friday and Saturday, but a big chunk of them I bought on Friday. I bought 85 individual comic issues in total. And like I said, probably around, I want to say 35, 40, probably around 40 I bought at this one vendor. So this is... So the shop that I bought it from is from Dave's Comics and Cards. This is in apparently they're from Fort Mill, South Carolina. Dave'sComicsOnline.com. So he had essentially 4 booth areas. It was a pretty decent size area on the floor that he had. So he had comics on essentially 2 booth areas, and then he had trades on the other 2 sides. And I mostly focused on the comics. So he was selling comics at mostly, what was it? $1 and $2. So the $2 ones were they were the ones that were bagged and boarded. They were the better conditioned comics, and then the other ones, the $1 comics, were bagged. That was it, but they're still pretty good condition. So that was the place to go for me. That Dave's Comics hit the sweet spot for me in terms of organization, quality, price. So I ended up buying quite a bit of books there. And so just so you know, I will be doing a video where I will show off all the stuff that I got at HeroesCon. So if you're interested in actually seeing the stuff that I'm talking about, you can find that. It'll be posted along with a link to this show on the website at longboxreview.com. So I'll have both the podcast episode and that video episode. But if you want to go check it out, it's on YouTube. Go to YouTube and look up Longbox Review. That's my user handle there, of course, and you'll find that along with a bunch of other videos in which I show off things that I have bought at other cons and various other things. Anyway, so I ended up buying quite a bit of, a huge chunk of the Legion of Superheroes titles, the Legion titles. So I decided a few years back that... So I had dropped the Legion of Superheroes title. I don't remember what issue it was that I dropped it. And then, of course, they canceled it and brought it back a few more times. And so there's a big chunk of Legion reading that I haven't done. And so I decided that I would start to pick up all those issues and titles, Legionnaires mostly, and the continued on with the Legion of Superheroes. There's a bunch of other things too, shorter runs of the Legion that I do not have. So I picked up a big chunk of those. And so when I went up to pay, the guy who I talked to, I presume who was Dave, asked me, "So are you the guy that called me about the Legion books?" And I'm like, "No, not me." So there's some person out there who had contacted Dave and said that they would be by to buy a bunch of Legion books, and I took a lot of them. Sorry, dude. Oh well. So like I said, I bought a bunch of books there. There's some other places I bought some stuff, but that was the main one. like I said, the other vendors were either they were charging too much, or their selection wasn't very good, or it was really hard to find stuff, because I hate going through unorganized boxes. Now, I did it a little bit. In fact, there was one, I'll just give you this brief story. I was at this one other vendor looking through stuff, and their books were all out of order. It was a mess. And I was standing right next to this other guy who was going through stuff, and I just happened to look over when he pulled a book out of the box and was looking at it, and it happened to be an issue of World's Finest Comics that was on my list. And I'm standing there just kind of, my fingers are dancing through the books, but I'm not really looking at the stuff that in the box in front of me. I just, my eyes are peeled on this guy and that particular comic, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, please put it back. Oh, please put it back. Oh, please put it back. And he did. So he put it down. I'm like, now move away slowly. And then I went over there and grabbed that book. It wasn't in the best condition, a little rougher than I like to buy, but it was $1, and I had a hard time finding, or I was having a hard time finding that particular book. So there, not only was I looking for the Legion books, but there are a few single issues that I'm having a hard time finding, and that World's Finest issue was one. I was looking for a post-crisis Superman comic, number 416. I never found that one. There are a few more. But what I did find, I was able to complete my collection for the Adventures in the DC Universe book, which just within the last year I decided I wanted that entire run. So I was able to do that. There was the issue of Birds of Prey where Nightwing shows up. This is number 8. That is a hard to find book, let me tell you, if you're interested in that. I have been looking for that for a long time. I actually have it digitally. I bought it digitally because I really wanted to read it, because I'd heard it was a really great story between Nightwing and Oracle. And it was, but I really wanted that particular issue in my collection. And I've been having a hard time finding it at a decent price, because it's usually, $30-$50 I've seen, and I just don't think it's worth that. But I did find it at the Heroes Aren't Hard to Find booth. So, Heroes Aren't Hard to Find is the comic book shop that Shelton runs, as well as doing the con, I believe. And so I found, I don't mean to be mean, but I found that the prices at Heroes aren't hard to find. What a long name for a comic book shop. I found the prices to be a little overpriced, so I didn't buy too many books there. But I did find this issue of Birds of Prey that I'm really excited to have in my collection now. Along the way, I don't remember. I think this was at Dave's Comics as well. I found the 1997 short run of the new Hawk and Dove with the characters that actually have wings. It was a series that I totally ignored when it came out, because I like the original concept of Hawk and Dove. But I had this. It was a 5-issue run. I think it was intended as an ongoing, but due to poor sales, I'm guessing they cut it short at 5 issues. But so they had all 5 issues. So I love Hawk and Dove. I love those characters. I plan to do a spotlight on Hawk and Dove at some point. And so I thought, well, what the heck? I should get this so that my collection is complete, so to speak. I mentioned the Legion of Superheroes before, but one of the things that I wanted to get is an older miniseries from 1986 called Legionnaires 3. It's a 4-issue miniseries featuring the founding members of the Legion, Lightning Lad, Saturn Girl, and Cosmic Boy, going up against the Time Trapper. And I, for some reason, did not get that back then, back in 1986 time. So I've been looking for that, and I found I found 3 of the 4 issues, and I already was able to purchase one of them, I think, at Emerald City. So now I have that, which is really cool to me. I got more issues of the New Adventures of Superboy, so I've completed my run on that. A couple Marvel team up issues that I was missing that I wanted, and some Robin issues. So I got the Robin 1 million, that tie into the DC 1 million event, just because I love Robin, and the idea of a robotic Boy Wonder just looks really cool on the cover. And then there were a couple titles that I used to get. I had gotten back in the early '80s. One is Infinity Incorporated, and the other is Vigilante. And so I had a bunch of those issues, and over the years just got rid of them, gave them away. And I don't know why I did that, because now here we are in 2016, and I find myself wanting to read those old stories again, because I really enjoyed at least the first 12 issues of both, so to speak, because the Vigilante I only got up through issue 7. So I remember really enjoying those first 7 issues. So I found those again, of course paid more than I paid for them before, which is why I don't want to ever give away anything else again. Who knows what I will want to reread later on in my comic book collecting. And same with Infinity. I got the first 12 issues. I could have got more, because I found a vendor who was selling books at $3 a pop, and I don't remember the name of the vendor, so I'm sorry about that. But I got a good chunk of stuff from them. That was on Saturday, where I found, no, that was Sunday. I found a bunch of stuff there Sunday. I spent a good $70 at that place, because he had a lot of good things. I think that's it. That pretty much covers the highlights. Like I said, one more thing. One more thing, and then I'll move on. One of the things I love to try to find are, and this has to do with the again, recapturing my youth, I guess, but they're the DC digests. I had a bunch of these, and then again, like I said before, I got rid of them for some reason. One digest in particular, so I found a bunch of them. One vendor had a bunch of them, and they wanted $5 a piece for these things. And at that point, when I found these, I was kind of holding off on buying them, because the digests are fun, and they have some nostalgic value to me, but they're reprints. And while I enjoyed reading them, I don't know, I wanted to focus on the things that I hadn't read before, new stuff that I hadn't read before. But I saw this Best of DC Blue Ribbon Digest. This is number 7. It's spotlighting Superboy stories. And so I bought that one. That's the only one I got. Now I wish I had kind of gotten some other ones, because the digests are really hard to find, at least in terms of my comic book hunting. So anyway, if you're sensing some disappointment in my voice, it's because I flipped through this digest and realized it wasn't as cool as I remembered. There are a couple stories in here which are kind of neat. There's a Superboy and Aquaboy team up, that the art of which I particularly enjoyed. But all the other stories are just, I don't know. It's not as cool as I thought it was from before. So anyway, that's the rundown of the comics. Like I said, I went through all of that vendor row. And then I hit the artists row. And my God, that such really cool, interesting art and other crafts. It was amazing. I was kind of overwhelmed by all the stuff that I saw, and my desire to buy a bunch of stuff. So right before I went to HeroesCon, I had a bunch of prints that I bought at Emerald City Comic Con that I still had not hung up in my office. And so I think it was the weekend before HeroesCon. My wife and I are cleaning up the house and doing things around the house. She had me hang up some photos that we'd had done, and we wanted to put up on the walls in our living space. And so I decided to, since I was doing that already, I had the tools out, I might as well put all this stuff up in my office. So I did that, and I realized that I'm running out of room. There are still things that I have not hung up that I need to hang up, and I don't have much room. So I went to HeroesCon with the edict that I would not buy any prints. No more prints. And then I broke that rule as soon as I got there. So like I said, I'm walking around the artist row, and I find this guy. He's got some really cool designs, showing in his booth. And so this is Cole Drews. So it's C-O-L-E, Cole, and Drews, D-R-E-W-E-S. So you should go check him out, because he had some really cool designs. And I have this one. I think it was the first thing I bought after the comics. The first thing I bought, which is a print. And so he had these cutouts that he had done, and then laid them on top of each other, and then colored them, and the background just looks really cool. I cannot describe this sufficiently enough. So, like I said, if you want to see this, I'll be showing it on the video that will be on the website. So, but what it is a bunch of these cutouts of the Batman family. So you have the big bat, big black bat in the background, and then there's the Nightwing logo, and then a yellow Batgirl. It's the blue Nightwing logo, by the way. A yellow Batgirl, a red red hood symbol, Red Robin's symbol, and then Robin, the Damian Wayne version of Robin symbol down at the bottom. So it's all layered. It's really cool looking. So I bought that. He had a really cool. What drew my eye to his booth was this. Again, he does these cutouts, and then he digitally paints them, and then makes the prints. But there was one that was a Wonder Woman one, but he had a bunch of other ones that were really cool. He has an Etsy shop. I'll probably have a link in the show notes for that. But so I bought that print. So now I gotta find a place on my walls to hang that one up. There's something else that I bought, but I'll get to that when I talk about Saturday. So, like I said, there were a bunch of panels that I wanted to go to, but I was having so much fun on Friday that I missed the first panel that I wanted to go to. So they have the South Carolina. Well, it's called SCAD. It's South Carolina something arts and design, I think it was. Anyway, they had a bunch of these workshops that they did all through the weekend, and so I really wanted to go to one of those. But I missed it, and I missed all of them actually, because of you make these plans, and then you get into it, and you're doing the shopping, and then you need to eat, and anyway, so you miss stuff. I do anyway. However, what I did not miss was the 2:30 panel for the Sixth Gun 50th issue celebration. So they had Colin Bunn and Brian Hurt there to talk about the 50th issue and just kind of talk about the series in general, which was really cool. So Sixth Gun was one of those things that I was introduced to by Travis, Mr. Oddfellow's Thoughts, and he was a huge proponent of that book. And so I got into it and discovered, as he did, that it was really cool. So I've been reading that book, I think since, I want to say within the first 12 issues, I was reading it. And I've been reading it ever since. So really, really cool book. If you haven't checked out The Sixth Gun, you really should. But so they just released the 50th issue. I did not so the 50th issue was released the week of the con, but because of the way I get my comics from DCBS, I was not going to be able to read it until after I got back from the con, which is kind of a bummer. But so I went to the panel anyway, They did ask. Brian Hurt did ask if anybody had not had a chance to read it yet, and there were quite a few of us there that raised our hands. So they didn't want to spoil anything about it, which I wouldn't have minded because this was a panel celebrating that issue in particular. So, I figured going in that I'd get some spoilers, but they were really cool about that. And they talked about the origins of the book. Gosh, I wish I should. I want to get into that, but I'm running long on this already. So maybe I'll talk about that some other time, maybe with Travis. So, but the story was really cool. Colin Bunn did talk about how the original pitch. No, I'm just going to do it. The original pitch for this was a 6-issue series where the story was a bit different, and one of the main characters in the books would be a really bad guy, and that pitch was denied by Oni. It was rejected. But Oni was apparently at some point they were meeting with Hollywood for to pitch some potential movie properties from their catalog, and nothing was really working until one of the Oni representatives brought up this supernatural Western that would become the Sixth Gun. Only they didn't have they rejected it. They didn't have it. There was nothing, technically there was nothing to it. So then apparently Oni called up Colin and said, "Hey, remember that Six Gun series you want to do? Yeah, we'd like you to do it now." So I thought that was a really cool story. But what I would love is for them to actually do the original pitch, because based on what they said about it, that would have been a really cool story. And I think that would still fit in with the whole with what Six Gun is, given the supernatural fantasy elements of it. They could easily fit that story in. They could have fit it in with one of the storylines, the storyline or two, the arc or two before the ending. But anyway, they also announced that they would go back to. So they had Colin and Brian worked on a series called The Damned, I believe. And then they announced there that they would be going back to that. So they're going to re-release the issues that have already come out years ago, and that they would be continuing the story. So I'm definitely going to be jumping on board that because those guys do a really good job telling a really interesting comic book story. And then finally, they announced early on in that panel that all the attendees of the panel, and there were, I think in the end, there were maybe 30 of us tops. So I was actually kind of surprised that the panels were not as well attended as I'm used to at Emerald City. I don't know what that says about the con. Maybe nothing, except that I was pleasantly surprised that I never had to. Well, except for one. There was one panel where I kind of had to wait in line, but it was almost irrelevant. You could just basically walk in, and most of the seats were not filled for the most part. Except, like I said, there was one that I went to that was different. But this one, there were, like I said, when I walked in, there were maybe 15, 20 people, and then others came in after the panel started. But like I said, they were offering a free signed HeroesCon exclusive variant issue 50. So I got that, which I thought was really cool. So I got to read the ending of the series that night. So now I have 2 issues of Six Gun number 50. One signed by Colin Bunn and Brian Hurt. So I thought that was really cool. Now they were selling those variants at their booths, but for the people who showed up at the panel, you got it for free. So I thought that was really, really cool. I also had decided that I wanted to go to the Inkwell Awards, which was at 5 p.m. that night, because it had a special appearance by Jim Steranko. So I got to see Jim Steranko up close. Not at the Inkwell Awards because I think I was just exhausted. By 5 o'clock, I was exhausted. So plus I think I was still shopping. I don't remember now why exactly I decided to skip that one. But what I did not skip was the 5:30 panel, which was called Colorist Lucky, and so they had 6 colorists on the panel, including Matthew Wilson, who does a lot of books that I read, including Wicked and Divine and The Mighty Thor. So, like I said, I really like to hear artists, pencilers, inkers, colorists. I like to hear these guys, especially the colorists. For some reason, I've been really focusing on the color artists. And so I went to that panel, and that's where I was just exhausted. I was just sitting there before the panel, just trying not to fall asleep. And then the panel started. Of course, I woke up and was really engaged with what they were saying. Let's see here. Let me check my notes. Yes, I took notes. So they talked a lot about profiles, which are digital to print conversion profiles. Each company has its own profile, and given that these color artists end up working for multiple companies, they have to deal with this all the time, and it's apparently a pain in the ass. Let's see, I'm just going to run down through my notes here. Apparently, Nathan Fairbairn, if you're familiar with his work, he does a lot of coloring across the industry. Does a really nice job. Apparently, someone made the comment that he cares about his coloring so much that he will do 2 coloring jobs for his creator-owned work, one for print and one for digital, because they are different. It's not a one-size-fits-all process. Let's see. One of the guys talked about how at DC, the color artists have been moved from the production department to the art or creative department, which I can't remember which one he said, which they thought was a huge improvement. They all were pretty much, I want to say they were all in agreement that they thought that that colorists should be part of the creative side and not considered to be part of the production side, which I agree with. Let's see. The comment was made that that creator-owned artists are very hands-on with their colors in general, but the big 2 can be hit or miss. Although things have been improving, they mentioned Black Widow in particular. The artist who one of the color artists who works on Black Widow, because of the creative team on that book, Mark Waid, Chris Samney. And I'm blanking on the color artist. God, it's so bad. I'm talking how much I like to listen to color artists talk about their craft, and I can't remember who works on what. But that Black Widow comic has a creator-owned feel, that person said. So they very much are paying attention and doing focusing on it more so than say other big 2 titles in their experience. Because a lot of the people that go to these kind of panels, they're wanting to be color artists, and so there were a lot of questions about the business side of it. And one of the things they talked about how as far as the royalties go, some person said that Marvel pays low percentage royalties, like 1% to 2%, which they didn't like. Image Comics charges a production fee to the creators, and the rest of the money that is made from the sales of the books is split between the creators. And so one of the things that they talked about was if you are a color artist, make sure you get a good deal, essentially, right? So you work with the artist and the writer. And if you're good and you're a good business person, you should get a decent and fair chunk of that revenue. And then the final thing that they talked about, which I thought was really cool and reminded me of my own workplace, which is not creative, and not to mention when I'm in my office doing the podcast and doing comic book related stuff, they said, take care of yourself physically, invest in a good chair, get up and walk around, stretch, you can't just sit hunched over a tablet or a digital tablet or paper, staring at a monitor for hours on end and not expect that to take a toll on you physically. And in respect of that, I am currently standing up as I record this, and usually I sit down. And even though my legs are getting tired because I've been standing about an hour as I'm talking at this moment. It probably won't be an hour after I get done editing to you, but I feel much better actually in my shoulders and my neck. So that's good. Okay. Day 2, Saturday, the big day. So I get there about half an hour early because I got there Friday and I basically didn't have to wait very long. Got there half an hour early and the line was out the door and around the corner. I'm like, oh, wow, that's interesting. So a lot more people, at least at that time that I was there to begin with, but we got through the line fairly quickly. As I'm in line, someone calls my name. And I turn around and it's Bruce Leslie of the Heroes and Villains podcast. We shake hands, say hello. When I got inside and went down the escalator to the entrance to the show floor, I kind of stood there waiting for Bruce because I wanted to talk to him because we've made other plans at Emerald City before and we just never been able to see each other. So, but somehow we missed each other anyway. So Bruce, if you're listening, I'm sorry about that. Hopefully one of these days we can actually stand and talk to each other for more than, a few seconds. But let's see. So Saturday, that's the day that I bought the shirt. The non-compliant shirt. I actually went over. So the place is called a fine print shop, I believe. And they actually make the shirts for you right there. It's not like they're pre-made and you give them the $20 and they hand you a shirt. There's all these colors that you can choose from, and you choose the design that you want them to print because it wasn't just that one. They were doing others as well. So I got that. I watched them do it. My good friend Greg, who has been on the show a few times, and has been a sponsor for his business, the Cover Me Tees. He makes t-shirts, and I've seen the process that he goes through to do that, and just to see how the guy that was there at the fine print booth did it was just fascinating to me. He puts a shirt on, he puts the stencil on top of it. He has this big like foam paintbrush, for lack of a better description. And he just ran that over the stencil a couple times, and then he took the shirt off and put it on this drying an iron, I guess, essentially is what it is, to cure and dry the whatever it is, the paint, I guess. I don't know if it's paint. I don't know what you call it. I need to talk to my friend Greg. And then gave it to me. It's like it was done within 5 minutes. I had this custom made t-shirt, which I thought was really cool. But then one of the first things I wanted to do was go to Colin Bunn and Brian Hurt's booth area because I wanted to buy another HeroesCon variant edition, issue 50 of the 6 gun, have them sign it because I wanted to give that to Travis, which as I record this, I did it yesterday. I stopped by his house and I gave it to him. So just want to do that for my buddy. I talked to very briefly, I walked by Marguerite Bennett's booth and there was no one there at the moment. So I just kind of went up to her and said, I love your Twitter feed. And I think she was kind of taken aback at that because, most people will come up and say how much they love your work. And I do like the books of hers that I've read, the DC Bombshells and Insects. But I particularly love her Twitter feed. She's a riot. She's just a lot of fun to read. And, I get a big kick out of that. So I told her that, I had the previous day I was walking around, I guess I need to back up. Before I went to HeroesCon, I was thinking about getting, commissioning some art. So I think I'm about done with the back issue buying. I mean, I'm not done, but it's not going to be as big of a focus in future cons that I go to. I want to start getting some art, whether it's buying, comic book pages, the original art for the comic book pages, or commissioning, a piece of art from an artist. And so I did a search for artists who were going to HeroesCon and who were saying that they had commissions. So there was one guy that I found on Twitter. His name is, I hope I'm saying this right. His name is Jeff DeCal or Decal. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I did not ask him, and I feel really bad about that. His coloring is amazing. You should look him up. Look up Jeff DeCal. I'll have a link in the show notes for where you can find his stuff. But he has amazing art, and so I emailed him before HeroesCon and said, "Hey, you I saw that you had commissions open. Do you still have them open?" He's like, "You should come talk to me at the show." And so Friday is when I did. I talked to him. At that time, he has an art book out. It's called Metanoia, I think I want to say, Metanoia. Not sure how to pronounce that, but it had a bunch of his art in there, and I really like his art, so I got it. And I had talked to him about doing a commission, and so we talked about the prices and whatnot, and I said, well, because I wasn't sure yet how much I was going to spend on comics, so I didn't want to commission anything on Friday. But by Saturday, I pretty much knew I was, at the point that I went back and talked to him, I knew I was pretty much done with buying the comics that I was going to buy. And I had some money left over and decided that I would go ahead and commission this piece from him. So I did that, and then I picked it up on Sunday. And so what it was is what I wanted to do since the last Emerald City was start getting commissions, but get artists to draw Robins. So my favorite character in comics, which is Robin or Dick Grayson. But I want them to do like any Robin they want. That's kind of my angle in, it's like, so I asked Jeff, can you do a Robin? He's like, you mean, as in Batman and Robin? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, which one? And I said, whichever one you want. And he said, well, does Nightwing count? Nightwing was Robin once, right? So I did that. I said, yeah, that's fine. So he did me a Nightwing. And so you could get him to just draw one, but he also does watercolor stuff. And so I bought a bust of Nightwing, and then he did the watercolor with the black and the blue. He did the blue version of Nightwing, which is really cool. It's really cool, guys. Like I said, if you want to see this, it'll be in that video. So there were a couple panels on Saturday that I went to. Well, there were supposed to be more than a couple because I planned to go to the Spotlight on Steranko panel that was at 11. Unfortunately, I thought for some reason that it was at 12, and at about 11:30, I happened to look at my watch and remember, I looked at my watch and saw it was 11:30, and I need to look up which room the Steranko panel is in, and when I do, I see that I've missed it. So I really wish I could have gone to that one. But what the one I did go to at 12:30 was the Sexy versus Sexualized panel that was moderated by Marguerite Bennett. The panelists include Chris Anka, Babs Tarr, Kevin Wada, who didn't say a whole lot in that panel, Jen Bartel, and one unannounced guest, Jake Wyatt, who turned out to be quite the storyteller. He told some stories about his mother and relating to the depiction of women in mass media that were quite funny. But what they did talk about in this they did talk about the Manera Spider-Woman cover, and Babs Tarr brought up the idea, which I thought of at the time too, the outrage over that cover and how, people were calling for Marvel to not hire him anymore and all this stuff. And what Tarr said was that the Marvel editors should have shouldered more of that blame, more of that outrage, and not the artist, because they're the ones that hired the guy. That cover went through approvals. It wasn't just him putting that out there and they were just going to publish it as, without, ever okaying it. But, such is fandom's outrage. One of the questions from the audience involved Wonder Woman's costume, and this person asked the panel, how would you redesign it now? And basically the answers that they came back with was, how is the costume should be a reflection of the character. And I think it was Jake Wyatt who also said it also depends on what version you're drawing of Wonder Woman. Is it the 1940s World War II era Wonder Woman? Is it the a more modern version or whatever? How does the character inhabit the era? And so you need to design the costume in a way that reflects that. Let's see here. The artist, one of the artists on the panel, I forget who, I think it was Chris Anka, said that that men who design female costumes for females should have to wear the costume first to see how practical it is. That's one of the things they talked about too, was how the costumes should be practical. How you can't just a costume isn't just painted on. There has to be zippers and buttons and attachments. You have to get into the suit. And then they talked about a little bit about how they were praising the cosplay community and how they take these designs that they see in the comics or in the movies or whatnot, and actually make them work. Because they talked about some designs that are in the comics that just don't work. From a practical, usable sense, the costumes do not work, and yet the cosplayers are able to make it work. So I thought that was really cool that they said that. They also mentioned there was an artist online. Her name is Kate Beaton, who put out a series of sketches online, satirizing poor costume choices. There's an article on the marysue.com about it that once I looked it up, I quite enjoyed the humor involved. I'll include a link to that as well, so you should look that up. So that I forgot to mention that panel was the first one that I had gone to where it was pretty well packed. I think it was standing room only at one point. It was a smaller room. It wasn't like the next panel that I'll talk about that I went to, which was basically 2 rooms, it was a double size area. But yeah, so that was what I was used to seeing in terms of panel attendance. And so I think a lot of that had to do with the artists involved. Maybe the topic, I don't know. Marguerite Bennett even said at the beginning of that there's no way that they were going to come up with the definitive answers or any kind of definite commentary, I guess, about the sexualization of comic book characters, specifically of female characters. But it was an interesting panel regardless of what they talked about. I found it really cool, again, to hear artists talk about the design element of what they do. Some artists really take pride in the designs that they come up with, that they are realistic, that they're workable, and that they also fit the whole superhero mold that these tight-fitting colorful costumes that serve a purpose, as opposed to some other designs. Okay, so then there was at 2:30 there was the Milk-Fed Criminal Masterminds panel. So the description here is: last year's HeroesCon marked the very first ever Milk-Fed Criminal Masterminds panel. Masterminds Kelly Sue DeConnick and Matt Fraction return with the other collaborators. They'll talk current projects, what's new, and what's coming for Milk-Fed. There will be giveaways, it says. Well, so I read a couple. I've read a couple of Matt Fraction's books, including Sex Criminals right now, currently. I haven't really read a whole lot of Kelly Sue DeConnick's work. However, much like I said about Marguerite Bennett and her Twitter feed, DeConnick's postings on Tumblr and Twitter and other things that I've read about her, I find her fascinating and quite frankly inspiring. The messages that she puts forth, the support that she offers people in the cosplay and comic book communities, and I just think that she is really an interesting person. So I wanted to go to this panel, and also just to get a sense of the cult personality aspect of the DeConnick Fraction duo. And so I went there. Like I said, this was the panel that was basically a double room. It filled up quite quickly. There was some AV trouble, but they got through that eventually. And they basically started out by making some comments about the shooting in Orlando. And so apparently at the last year's Milk-Fed panel, there was another tragedy that they commented on and had a moment of silence at the beginning of that panel for that shooting. Fast forward 1 year later to where we're at, and basically they're like, F that, there shouldn't be any more silence. And so they asked us to sing the chorus to Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which I thought that was particularly cool of them to do it in that way. Anyway, then they did Matt Fraction did, I thought it was really cool. They did a quiz. So if you could answer a trivia question, they gave out prizes, stuff that they brought. They called it the Kanye Ultron Tallulah quiz, which was Fraction would say this quote, and you had to tell them whether it was made by Kanye, Ultron, or their daughter Tallulah. And that was particularly funny. I wish I had the forethought to have written down the questions. But I think all of them were by Tallulah. There were 3 of them. Anyway, so like I said, I haven't read too much of DeConnick stuff. I read the first trade to Bitch Planet, and so there were a lot of people there that were huge fans of that work. Like I said, the T-shirt I bought was the non-compliant, which is from Bitch Planet. That design. So they talked a lot about how they have licensed clothing for Bitch Planet and some of the other properties that they're dealing with, or that they're working on. And it was a huge point of them to only work with clothiers who could provide a wide range of sizes, which I found very cool as well. So they're very conscious of that. So then Matt Fraction showed photos of his vasectomy procedure that he texted to Chip Zdarsky as it was happening. Just, they're oddballs. So when I was at Emerald City Comic Con, there was a big banner that was near the entranceway, and it said something about Emerald City. And at first I thought, well, is that some sort of promotional thing for the con, and I quickly realized that no, it wasn't. It's some sort of TV special that's coming to NBC. And so what I did not know at this point until Kelly said it, Kelly Sue DeConnick said that she wrote the screenplay or teleplay, whatever the proper term is, for this. I think it's a miniseries event that's coming this fall to NBC. So it is another take on The Wizard of Oz. So they talked about that a bit. Matt Fraction wrote the screenplay for the Sex Criminals pilot. So there might be a Sex Criminals TV series in the future. He's also working on, he's working on the Wicked and Divine TV series for the Wicked and Divine team. I'm not sure why he's doing it as opposed to the other guys, but anyway, new comic books coming out. They talked about Parisian White, which is Kelly's book that's being drawn by Bill Sienkiewicz, who actually did show up to the panel rather late, but because he was doing other things. But that I'm going to get. What else? Fraction Zdarsky and Amy Wu are working on a book called Recidivist. Fraction and the Dodsons are working on a comic called Adventure Man, which looked pretty cool. Like I said, Kelly Sue DeConnick to me can be inspiring, and I have to say she kind of touched me too. She talked about how there were some questions from the audience, and one thing she talked about was having, I'll just boil it down. So she said this, having even a shitty book, a crappy book out in the world is better than just having a cool idea, because having a crappy book published means you're a writer, whereas if you don't, you're just a dreamer. And it made me realize that I have in the last several years, I've kind of given up on my dreams. I am just a dreamer. I have a couple ideas in mind for superhero fiction that I would really like to do, and I'm not writing, so I'm not a writer, and I want to get back to that. One of the questions was from the audience was, as a creator owner, how do you know when something is done, as opposed to if you're working on corporate comics where you have a deadline and you either meet it or you get fired, essentially. Whether it's, regardless of how good it is. And Kelly said, when it's ripped from your hands, and the kind of, I think she's billed as the editor. Let me look here. Managing editor Lauren Sankovich. Usually, I think Kelly said that Lauren usually is the one that's dragging the stuff out of her hands, figuratively, of course. What else? Matt Fraction said basically when he knows someone needs to get paid. So like if he's not meeting his deadlines, that means his artists that he's working with aren't getting paid. That means their kids aren't getting fed, So he feels that kind of pressure to get things done. And let's see, there was a lot of talk about things. The question was asked, well, what are you reading? What do you recommend? And Matt Fraction said that they're at the Panel Syndicate website. He said that there's a strip there or a book called, I don't know what do you call it when it's an online only comic. It's not a comic book. I'll just call it a comic. Anyway, it's an online comic. He said Universe is the best comic that no one's reading. So I'm going to be checking that out. I mean, I've looked at it before. I just haven't actually bought the issues that they've released. Because I don't know if you know, but Panel Syndicate is where you can go to get digital comics and you pay what you want. So I'll be buying a few of those to see if it's as good as Matt Fraction says it is. One of the funny things I mentioned before that happened, let me rephrase that. One of the funny things that happened I mentioned before that Parisian White is something that Bill Sienkiewicz is working on with Kelly Sue. Like I said, when he finally got to the panel, he started complimenting Kelly and her writing. And as he was talking, it was really funny because Kelly, she covered her face. She kind of dropped her head down at the table. As he kept talking, she kept getting lower and lower and ended up disappearing below the table. Under, by being embarrassed by the compliments. So I thought that was really cute. The panel ended up, I did not realize this looking at the schedule, but the panel was 2 hours long. It was scheduled for 2 hours, and I expected an hour. And so when they said at the beginning that the panel was going to be 2 hours, I'm like, oh, well, I'll maybe spend an hour and then I'll go off and do some other things. That did not happen. I happily spent those 2 hours there. It did not even feel like 2 hours because that panel was so much fun and so engaging and lots of information. Even though like I said, I don't read a lot of the fraction deconic stuff, I definitely will be looking more and more at what they're doing. And just the whole, like I said, the whole cult of personality with those guys, they were like rock stars there. It was really cool to be in on that, to experience that firsthand. And let's see, I think I went out to the show floor and just kind of walked around, did some more shopping, and then I went and had some dinner. And now that I'm standing here talking about it, I don't remember. So I went to Midnight Diner on Thursday night. Gosh, I don't remember where I went now. What places I went. That's too bad. All I know is I went to the pizza place. I think I went to the pizza place on Saturday. Yes, it was. It was Saturday night. There was a pizza place called Fuel Pizza that was set in, or it was located in an old garage, old car garage or gasoline station or something. And they made pizzas there and other pizza-like stuff. And I went there. I left the con a little bit early before the con went out because I figured that kind of place would just fill up very quickly with lots of people and have to wait a long time. I mean, I had to wait like half an hour, 45 minutes in line as I ordered and waited for them to make my pizza. But I took that back I got the pizza, took it back to my room, ate it all by my lonesome. And then crashed. I basically, again, fell asleep for a while. I ended up watching a lot of diners. What's that show on is it the Food Network? Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. Yeah, the Guy Fieri show. Because I like the show. But anyway, but I tell you what, it really highlighted how I really missed having my wife there. I discovered that even though I was very excited to go to this show and experience all that stuff, I really didn't have. I mean, I my wife and I talked. We called each other each night. We did FaceTime on our phones so we could see each other and stuff, and that was nice. But not having her there and not having our kids there, because we take them to Emerald City. I don't know. I think I prefer having people there to hang out with me so that I can share my excitement with them and I can talk with them, even though my wife doesn't really care about all this comic book stuff. She cares that I care about it, and that makes all the difference. So anyway, I don't know that I would want to go to another con just all by myself. Okay, day 3, Sunday, lazy Sunday. I got there basically right before the show opened. As I came in, I saw Pants and Murd from Comic Geek Speak in line, and so I had actually seen them on Friday morning, and I just passing by, and then I kept looking for them the rest of the day. Never saw them again, but then I saw them in line on Sunday and then decided to stalk them and say hello, which I did. I had a great conversation with both of them. It was really nice to talk with them again. Last time I spoke with them in person was the CGS celebration back in March, over a year ago now. So it was really cool to talk with them. And then I went off to the Neil Adams, Bill Sienkiewicz panel. So there was a highlight panel featuring those two guys. And as I expected, Neil Adams stole the show because he would not shut up. He kept telling story after story after story, and poor Bill Sienkiewicz would interject on occasion, but he was happy. I think he was just happy to be there. They talked a lot about. I should say Adams talked about what was it? He talked about Frank Miller. He told this really long story about Frank Miller, how Frank Miller kept coming back to Neil Adams, and Neil Adams would give him a few pointers and send him off, and he kept coming back and kept coming back until he eventually, and Adams kept saying that, this is no good. Your stuff is not good enough. And then finally, Miller came back one day and showed Adams this stuff. And, Adams gave him some more pointers, again saying this is not good enough. And then Miller said, really, because Marvel just bought it. And Adams like, okay, you're done. You've made it. It was just a cute story. But one of the things they talked about was how they talked a lot about how artists need to know anatomy to be really good, and also how tracing photos is a good way to learn and get better with your art, so that you get to know the physiology of human beings and other creatures, right, and other things. And so I found that really interesting on a couple levels. One is, and one of the attendees in the panel brought this up, was basically, I think there's this impression with comic book artists, and maybe just artists in general, but that if you can't draw this stuff from just out of your head, from memory or whatever, then you're not, quote unquote, good enough. You're not a good artist. And both Adams and Sienkiewicz are saying, no, that's how you learn. And in fact, there was another panel that I went to. I think it was the panel later on Sunday. They also brought that up too, about tracing. And what a good teaching tool it is. And so I found that really refreshing that they would talk about that aspect of drawing, of art. Because when I was in my youth, I took art classes. I kind of had this thought that maybe one day I would become a comic book artist. That never really panned out. I turned out to be a better writer than artist. So I focused my creative juices in that way. But I always had that impression too, that, you should be able to draw, Superman from memory and do a good job that way. But no, it turns out I should have been tracing more. Which brings up an interesting point. I know that Greg Land, the artist Greg Land, gets a lot of grief because of his photo references that he uses a lot. And yet here are two industry giants, two industry greats, Neil Adams and Bill Sienkiewicz, saying you should be doing that as an artist. You should be using photo references. You should be tracing to get better. And so I'm kind of at a loss to explain this dichotomy, this perception, even within the industry, let alone fandom, that if you use photo references, that somehow you're a lesser artist. So I'm curious if you guys, if any of you have any thoughts about that. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. See, anything else about? There was one point where Mr. Sienkiewicz mentioned Neil Adams in the same sentence as Mort Drucker. And Neil Adams, in a rare moment of non-Neil Adams, what do I want to say here? I don't know, that non Neil Adams facade, that public persona. He was tickled. I think he was genuinely touched that Sienkiewicz would mention him on the same level as Mort Drucker, which they both admire. I was not familiar with that name, so I'm gonna go check him out. But apparently he's one of those artists. So they also talked about how. So the question was asked: who would Neil Adams talked about the variant DC cover series that he did, I think as a few months ago, where once the word got out that Neil Adams was going to be penciling these covers, a lot of the other named artists like Bill Sienkiewicz, these big time pencilers in their own right, basically called up DC editors or editorial and said, "I want to ink Neil Adams stuff." And so a lot of the I guess normal inkers is the best way to put it, that would normally do the inks for covers for DC Comics didn't get to do a lot of those because all these other artists wanted to do it. Anyway, the question was asked, who would Neil Adams want to ink? And he named Gil Kane, John Buscema, and Gene Colan. So I thought that was interesting. And then, let's see here. I went to the 3 o'clock live comic penciling demo. This is with artist Sanford Green, who does the Power Man and Iron Fist series currently, and Ben Caldwell, who works on A-Force and the Prez comic. And so this is one of those things where they actually had a camera situated at the table and then projected on the screen, so you could see what they were doing as they were talking about it. And so that was a lot of Sanford Green. It was actually, let me back up. Ben Caldwell came in first and set up things, and he was just kind of going through the step-by-step process by which you create a book, or at least talking about how he creates a book. And he started doing these thumbnail sketches for something that he is going to be doing, a pitch that he wants to make to DC Comics for an existing character. He didn't go into specifics there. At one point, there was a guy that I saw in the audience. He had it looked like a Nikon camera, and he was pointing it up at Ben, and Ben's like, "Are you recording this?" And the guy said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, well, in that case, I won't mention specifics for that DC pitch." But he started drawing this stuff. So it was really, again, like I said, I'm really fascinated by how these artists do their craft. And here I was getting to see that live. So I thought that was really cool. But then Sanford Green came in, and he talked a lot about the business aspects of comic book artistry. They reiterated using reference and knowing anatomy that was talked about in the Adams-Sienkiewicz panel. Ben Caldwell talked about how he does the thumbnails instead of actually doing for his own work. He does thumbnails instead of scripting and then drawing. So he thumbnails it out. That's his draft, and then he'll go and do the finished work. They talked about how what do editors want out of an artist, and they said editors want someone who is good to work with and meets deadlines. And what they recommended was obviously try to be all three, but trying to be all three is sometimes really difficult. And so at the very least, you got to meet two of those. And they both, I think they both said something to the effect of basically be good to work with always. Because even if you don't meet your deadlines, but you're a good artist and you're good to work with, you're more likely to get work than if you're a fantastic artist and you're a crappy person. So, which I guess that applies to just about any job, but then I think after that panel, let's see, the convention actually ended at 6. But I think I was done. I did all my shopping. I actually picked up a few more books. on Sunday to finish up some of the things I was looking for. Although, like I said, there were a few things that I was still looking for that I did not find, which is unfortunate. But what a great shopping experience. I actually left the live comic penciling demo panel a little early because I was starting to get nervous about the commission that I got. Because when I asked Jeff to do the commission, he's like, okay, we talked about doing it. I paid him. He said, come by tomorrow, meaning Sunday, to pick it up. I didn't know when because I didn't ask. This is my first time that I had commissioned something like that, so I wasn't sure how it all worked and what I was nervous about, because as I was walking around the floor in between these panels, I actually walked by Jeff's booth a couple times, and he was constantly working. I kept trying to see is the thing that he's working on, is that the one for me? And it never seemed to be, but he was constantly working. He was working on at least 2 or 3 things every time I walked by during the day. And so I was getting a little nervous. Like I said, am I going to get it? When am I going to get it? When do I need to go? I didn't want to bug him, because he's busy working on stuff. I didn't want to go up there and say, hey, do you have my thing done yet? Like a jerk. But at the same time, I really wanted to get it. So let's see, it was about, I think it was after 3:30, definitely. So I think at around 3:45-ish that I finally went by his table, and he actually had it done. He pulled it out. It was nothing he was working on that day. But he pulled it out and gave it to me, and I was just tickled. I was looking at it, I had a big goofy smile on my face with the art, and he's like, you like it, right? I'm like, oh my God, yes. I love it. So I got that, and I think I was done. Once I got that, and I talked to him about possibly coming on the show, so I need to contact him about doing that, because I'd love to have him come on and just talk about his work, how he does it, and all that. So hopefully in a future episode, you'll be hearing more from Jeff DeCall. But like I said, I got that, and I was feeling really happy. I was over the moon that I had this piece of art that I commissioned, and so I just left the con a little early, went back to the hotel room, dropped everything off, and then I went and had dinner, which was I decided there were a couple quote unquote Irish pubs nearby, so I walked to those. There was one that was actual to goodness Irish bar. I wouldn't say it was a pub. It was more like a bar. But it turns out they didn't have much in the way of food, and I was starving. And so there was another one just down a block or 2 away from it. That was Fitzgerald's. And so I had the food there, and had a what they call black velvet, which is Guinness and cider mix, which I love. I love that mixture. Had one of those, and then decided I could not come here and not go to, I think it's O'Connell's Irish bar. And you walk in, and it's dark. It's a dark place. They had all these screens on up on the walls. They were watching the U.S. Open, the golf tournament, and the reason why. So let me back up. So I was sitting at the bar next to a couple guys. One of the guys was Irish. You could just tell by his accent. Well, he was watching it because one of the guys in the U.S. Open was from Ireland, and he was at that point in the lead to win the U.S. Open. Well, things did not go well for him over the course of the next few hours. Anyway, so because I ended up watching the rest of the U.S. Open at my hotel room after I walked back. But anyway, the American actually won that. It was pretty exciting, actually. If you like golf, it was a pretty exciting match. But anyway, so I had another pint of Guinness at O'Connell's, so I could say I actually went to. I think you look at the reviews for that place online, and it gets high praise for its pour of Guinness, and I have to say, well deserved. Anyway, on the way back, I stopped at Emily's for the last time and got another tart, and oh, it was so good. What a way to end my experience at HeroesCon. Like I said, I want to go back. Definitely want to go back. It's a great show. It is a great comic book focused show. Emerald City has become as big as it is, I think, in large part to the celebrity guests that they bring, the actors and others like that. So they're a big draw for, the larger populace who attend the cons. But HeroesCon does not have any of that. The celebrities there are the comic book artists and writers and other people involved in the industry. There wasn't a big publisher presence there. There was, I think, Valiant maybe had the biggest presence. I think Aftershock Comics had something there too. But there was no DC, no Marvel, no Image panels like I'm used to seeing at Emerald City. But despite that, or maybe because of that, it was a great show, a great comic book focused show where I got a lot of comics. I talked to some artists. Oh, I forgot to mention, speaking of artists, I wanted to mention this one in particular. I actually saw her stuff on the first day, and I went back to because I couldn't remember her name. Sonia Anwar. Look up Sonia Anwar's work. She is amazing. If I had more money, I would have bought something from her as well. Again, she was selling prints, but I did not want to. I didn't want more prints. But now, I wished I would have bought something from her because she's so good. Anyway, but like I said, a great show, great comic book focused show, and I can't wait to go back. But I really, really hope that we can swing it so that my wife goes, or Travis, I should say, and Travis, because that's one of his complaints about Emerald City Comic Con over the years is that it's too focused on the celebrity guests and not enough about the comic books. And that's, like I say, as I keep saying, that's what HeroesCon is all about. So I highly recommend it. If you have a chance to go to HeroesCon, do so. Go with some friends or family. Enjoy yourselves. It was a great time. Can't wait to go back. But now it's on to the next one. Which con should I go to next? I've always heard about Dragon Con being a good show. C2E2 want to go to. Fan Expo. So I'm talking about some of the bigger ones I know, but I don't need to go to San Diego Comic Con. I went there in 1996. Before it became what it is today, and I don't think I need to go to that one. New York Comic Con, like I said before, now the Baltimore Comic Con, since it's been so recommended over the last couple of years. I've heard other people talk about it, and of course, the other con that was going on the same weekend as HeroesCon, the Denver's Comic Con, the Comic Con in Denver, Colorado. That's what I want to say. So. Now I just have to figure out which one and when. So if you have any recommendations for Comic-Cons that you think I should try out, please let me know. If you have any questions or comments about my experience at HeroesCon that you would like me to expand upon, or just get some advice about attending HeroesCon if you've never been, any and all of the above, you can do so by emailing me at longboxreview@gmail.com. You can leave comments at the blog where this episode will be posted, along with the video I'll be doing for all of the swag I got at longboxreview.com. And I guess that's it. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.